In the aftermath of a shooting like the one that took place in Minneapolis just days ago, there is time spent on reflection and a renewed focus on what can maybe be done to prevent attacks in the future. On that point, we've heard from lawmakers who want stricter gun laws, like Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey on CBS Mornings yesterday.
Red flag laws are important, but they don't go far enough. Assault weapons bans. I mean, right now, we have more guns in America than we have people. That's a problem.
So you can focus on the guns or the shooter. First Lady Melania Trump posted online calling for, quote, preemptive intervention to identify potential shooters sooner and more aggressively. But by the way, there's another option beyond guns and the shooters themselves, and it's reigniting discussions right now. School security, the presence of people defending houses of worship, a method referred to as hardening those otherwise soft topics. So would that do it? Would that prevent more tragedies like this one? Joining us from Washington to talk about this and much more is CBS News Homeland Security contributor Sam Vinograd. Sam, thank you very much for being here. You can take away guns or make them harder to get. You can focus on intervention, make it more aggressive. Or, I guess, short of that, maybe it's an all three, all of the above, you can make targets less vulnerable to attack. Talk about hardening, if you could.
Well, Tony, to your point, these options aren't mutually exclusive, and we need to employ all of them. Hardening, which is really imposing physical security enhancements at a site like a school to make it more secure, is one of the methods that professionals use to try to prevent mass casualty events. Hardening can include putting up more walls, installing video cameras, having sworn law enforcement officers with weapons present at a school to try to protect students. The goal of hardening is really twofold. First, hardening is intended to deter bad actors from trying to engage in violence in the first place by sending a message that this site is so secure, you're not going to succeed even if you try to inflict damage. The second goal is to mitigate the impacts of violence if it does erupt. If you have an armed security guard on a campus, for example, they could try to neutralize a shooter if a shooter does start to engage in violence. So the goals of hardening are both to deter violence and to mitigate its impacts.
You know, Sam, is this going to be enough, though, on its own? Because Tony and I were just talking during the break ahead of this, saying if you have a shooter that is motivated enough, they're going to find a way. So, I mean, in your experience, would hardening be effective enough?
Hardening alone is not going to do it, Kelly. Bad actors are incredibly creative. We cannot harden our way out of the school violence epidemic that we're facing. Instead, we also need to focus on prevention, and this is something that the First Lady alluded to in her tweet. Prevention is a whole-of-community approach. It involves educating all members of a community about the signs that an individual is starting to radicalize and mobilizing to violence, so that you don't wait for the moment that an individual is grabbing a gun and heading to a school. Instead, you try to get an individual help, mental health support, for example, when they're showing signs that they may be going down a pathway to violence. That early intervention is really key, as is ensuring that there are ways to report threats, to report concerning behavior that people are comfortable with and educated about.
It's such a delicate call, though, because the vast majority of people who have a mental health challenge or issue are not going to go down the path to become school shooters. So it's hard to know when the intervention should come. Also, what role the local forces should play versus the federal government. Can you talk about the role of the federal government in any or all of these solutions?
Sure. Mental health professionals are just one potential part of a team that can be engaged if an individual may be showing certain signs of worrisome behavior. The federal government has an important role to play. The federal government has established a one-stop shop called schoolsafety.gov that lays out all the resources available to communities across the country to try to prevent, detect, and mitigate school violence. The federal government also provides a range of grant funding to try to protect schools across the country, as well as trains professionals that can help train individuals in schools on threat assessments, for example, and also help provide guidance on operational plans to make a facility more secure, the hardening that we're talking about. The federal government also was helping to train individuals on how to engage in early stage prevention through an office of the Department of Homeland Security. That office has been significantly diminished in the last year or so, but that prevention work remains incredibly critical.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, the hardening, what does that do to kids and their mental health and emotional health when they go to school that way? All right, Sam Vinograd, appreciate your time with today's By the Way. Thank you very much.